This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing News, and I am delighted to be joined here today by the one and only Jazz Lintott. Is it Lintott?
Do you know what? It's Lintott. You're the first person, I think, in years who's actually got it right first time out there. Everyone's always like Lintott. Right. I don't get it because it's, but you got it.
Well, hopefully it's a sign of things to come, and the interview will remain as seamless and serene as that. But thank you very much for joining us today, Jazz. Just a bit of a backstory into Jazz. You are a professional actor. You're working... You're sort of treading the boards and have done over the years, but you are here to talk about a very, very special project that you're working on and have been working on for the last few years. Yeah,
absolutely. First of all, I just want to thank you and the Boxing News team for letting me come on and talk about this project because big boxing fan, big fan of Boxing News, and the story that we're telling is an amazing, true story. So to be able to have this sort of spotlight shone on it is really appreciated. So thanks for that. So we're telling this great story about a man called Frankie Lucas, who was a boxer back in the 70s. He was trained by legendary trainer George Francis. So for any of the hardcore boxing fans out there, they'll definitely know who I'm talking about. Known as the trainer of champions, had 42 champions. John Conti was one of them, who was world champion. His latest one was Frank Bruno, when Frank Bruno won the world title. So this story really focuses in on that generation of boxing. It's a real sort of boxing history play, full of loads of gems that some people may not know of. Frankie Lucas, he came to England from St Vincent when he was a young boy. By the time he was 17, he was the British ABA champion, beating Alan Minter to claim the title. And it was the year of the Olympics in 72. And England refused to pick him, picking Minter instead. The next year, he was the champion again, and England again refused to pick him to represent them at the Commonwealth Games. So he gathered all his friends and family, all the local community around. Everyone did like car boot sales, raised money for him. William Hill ended up sponsoring him to fly out to New Zealand. And the Scottish team also sponsored him as long as he would spar with them because they hate the Brits or the English. And so they gave him some money to spar with them. And he flew out to New Zealand for the Commonwealth Games, representing St Vincent, knocked the English guy out in the semi-finals, won the gold medal, and then England lost out on the overall leaderboard by one gold medal, which would have been his had they had picked him. So it's a really remarkable story. Yeah.
It is a remarkable story. We'll delve into it. We'll delve into some of the more kind of the finer points of it. But I guess going right back to the start for yourself, we spoke on the phone the other day. And we were kind of jabbering back and forth to each other for a long time. You're also a boxing fan as well. You very much, you love the sport as well, which is always great to hear. And obviously will help when you're doing a play about something so niche within the sport.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge boxing fan. Been a big boxing fan since forever, really. I think the first fights that I really watched and was like a big fan of, I must have been about 8 or 9, I think, but it was the Ben Eubank fights. I remember sitting in my bedroom on my own, boxing was on, and I was just into it. So since then, I've always followed it and been a huge fan, which does help when I'm doing a boxing play because I've got to be I'm in the gym every day training down at Rivals Gym on Caledonian Road, which has been great. They've been really welcoming. Being a fan definitely helps.
I mentioned that was one of the things I was going to talk about. Kind of getting yourself into the right physical condition to be a boxer obviously helps, but also the mental side of things as well as an actor, getting yourself into that uncomfortable space that boxers tend to spend 99% of their lives in. Not your usual role to prepare for.
No, not at all, but it's really enjoyable because firstly, I'm not training for a fight, so I'm definitely not training as the professionals would be training, but to get in the ring, to really hone in on the craft and the technique, footwork, combinations, fitness, skipping, punch bags, all of that stuff. It's just great. I love it. I've even been saying to the guys down at Rivals, like, I'd love to get in a ring and actually have a proper go, but maybe I'll wait till after the play. But the whole aspect of it's given me huge respect, well, even more respect for boxers because, it's not easy at all. And I was speaking to the guy who owns it there, who's a professional fighter, and he was talking about his diet to the point of not being able to have any seasoning on his chicken and stuff because the seasoning has got calories. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm forever feeling terrible when I'm sat across from fighters who are like peak physical condition. I'm like sitting here looking like this. Really sorry, mate. I have seasoning on my chicken and I have it deep fried.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same. Just back to the project itself. When did you first become aware of Frankie? When did you first become aware of the project, and what ultimately enticed you into doing it?
Yeah, so there were two parts to that, really. I personally first became aware of the project about 4 years ago, or not the project, about Frankie 4 years ago. I was listening to Steve Bunce had a podcast before it was a podcast or a thing. It was something on YouTube called The Final Bell. And there he talked about Frankie Lucas and the story that I've mentioned. And I just thought it was amazing. And that was my first introduction to him. But my mum actually put me onto him. My mum first knew Frankie from probably the early 70s, around the time where, he was the ABA champion, moving into the professional era. She grew up in an area called Queen's Crescent, and George Francis's gym was in a pub called Southampton Row that was next door to my grand's greengrocer and deli. And my mum used to work the till there when she was a little girl, so all the boxers used to come in from like John Conti, the Mackenzie brothers, Frankie Lucas, and all the other boxers he trained. And she just really remembered Frankie, and she joined this writing course, and she had to write a short story about food. And it reminded her about when Frankie would come in with John and order half a pound of ox's tongue and milk. And she just thought that was a great opening line for a short story. Can I have half a pound of ox's tongue and some milk, please? So she wrote the short story, and then when she finished that, she just got really intrigued, like, what happened to that guy? And then that led on to doing some research, led on to finding the Steve Bunce Final Bell podcast thing, and then that just put my mum in this rabbit hole of trying to figure out where Frankie was, and that's how it all started.
It's amazing how you have those like twists of fate, and so like people always say like it's a small world.
Yeah,
I mean that really is quite eerie that you'd find yourself working on something like that later, and obviously kind of brought by your mum and stuff, but it's very strange how these things are always connected. Yeah,
absolutely. I think there's always I never really believe in coincidences. I think everything sort of happens for a reason, and through this journey of putting this play together, so many fantastic things have happened for the project, for me personally. And also for the family, Frankie Lucas and his family, to really be able to shine a light on his story, because it is his story and it is about him.
But it's bigger than that. It has so much more far-reaching implications from the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really allows you to see like what this generation of boxers went through, like the Bunny Sterlings, Bunny Johnsons, Roy Gums, Frankie Lucas, John Conti, Bozza Edwards, Clinton Mackenzie, all of these people, what they sort of went through, and the rules that George Francis managed to break really opened up the doors for the generation that came just after them, which also opened the doors for the generation we have now, the Dubois, the Joshuas, the Yards, all of that. So to be able to dive back into that time and learn all of these things has just been fantastic. It's been such a great project to be a part of.
I obviously don't want to. I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who are watching and very, very familiar with Frankie's story and whatever else. But yeah, just delve into some of those themes that you were talking about just there a little bit. I mean, obviously, you kind of forget we were talking about this just before we come on. That it wasn't actually that long ago when you consider the things that he had to overcome, and you consider where we are now as a community and indeed as a sport.
Yeah.
The fact that they're only sort of 50 odd years apart is incredible, really.
Yeah, it is really incredible. And at that time, there was a colour ban in place in England for a long period of time, which basically meant any person of colour couldn't challenge for any titles in England at all, regardless. You could be Commonwealth champion, but you couldn't be the British champion. And then George Francis really fought hard and advocated and got that rule removed. And it was replaced with the 10-year rule, which meant that you had to box for 10 years before you could challenge for a title. And as a lot of listeners will know, and you'll know, and other boxers, 10 years that's like your career. And so George also managed to get that rule removed, which then allowed people of colour from England to challenge for that British title. So it was really groundbreaking, and that's sort of what I mean about diving into the history of that era and what all of these fighters sort of went through. And you only have to, for anyone who I mean, I don't remember those fights because I wasn't born then, but I do know about the famous Minter-Hagler fight when Hagler came over to challenge for the world title, and Hagler said he would never come back to England ever again after that, because I know he had beer cans thrown at him, bottles thrown at him.
Basically a riot after.
Yeah, it was basically this big riot afterwards. And that was the era we're talking about. That was what, as well as having to overcome things in the ring, there was a whole load of things going on outside the ring that these boxers had to overcome and persevere through. So it's amazing to hear it all.
Obviously, you're putting yourself in Frankie's in his shoes, in his gloves, whatever you want to call it.
In his gloves, I like that.
Obviously, you have to kind of put yourself in that similar sort of emotional state as well, and that similar sort of thought process. How does it make you feel when you're kind of playing the role of him? What kind of feelings does it bring up to you as the actor?
You know what? It's not. It's a very hard role because obviously there's the physical side of things, but then there is the mental side of things. And sadly, through Frankie's journey, he developed mental health problems and psychosis. I think he fought 9 times over 6 years, and obviously back then, fighters were fighting like 9 times a year. Every time he was meant to fight Minter, it got cancelled. Every time he was meant to fight other people's, either the opponent got changed last minute or the fights just got cancelled altogether. So he was training a lot. He was always training, but never making any money. Plus the social and political situation at the time with racism. Sadly, over the course of that 6 years, he was sectioned. I think he was 26 when he got sectioned, and that was the end of his career. And so for me as an actor, it's very draining mentally to go through that journey of it. And it also has to be done in a way that's sort of true to how it happened, but also with delicacy, because Frankie had, he was a man of strength, dignity, pride, never gave up. So it is very challenging, but also it's educational. Yeah.
How did you find delving back through the archives of George Francis? Obviously, he's a very well-known man in kind of the British boxing circuit, right. British boxing history, really. Yeah. What sort of things did you find about him? What type of person do you feel he was?
Do you know what George was? I read his autobiography. I think it's called Trainer of Champions. I read it a couple of years ago when we first started this project. But George Francis, he was an incredible trainer. The amount of champions he had, the rules that he got broken, his spirit as a person. He fought for what was fair and right. There's a great line in the play which comes from the book as well. But he made a living from boxing, just about, but he lived for his boxers. And that is something that I have tremendous respect for him about. And I think it's actually, I know his son, Danny Francis, we've become, good friends. And, George, even though he's such a famous trainer, I don't think he's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. He doesn't have like a blue plaque. He doesn't have, unless you're like a die-hard boxing fan, I don't think he's known to the wider audience. And I hope through doing this play that we can shine a light on George Francis as well, and all the amazing things he did for boxing and all the amazing fighters that he had. Frank Bruno being one of them, John Conti being another, the Mackenzies, there's so many.
Now, obviously, I know we spoke the other day about you getting very close to opening night. We briefly spoke before we come on camera. Expecting quite the turnout from the boxing fraternity. I know we've spoken about people coming down. And, if you're watching this and you're a fighter or you're a friend of a fighter or you love your boxing, get down. Yeah. But you're expecting to be inundated, aren't you, with kind of a bit of a who's who? Yeah.
We certainly hope so. Through this process, like I said, we have had a lot of support from the boxing world, including guys like yourself. We've had a couple of articles in your magazine doing this now. But John Conti's been a big supporter. He's going to be there. The Mackenzie brothers will be there. Anthony Yard's shown support. He came to watch the last one. I believe he's coming as well. Joe Joyce. Joel, who trains with, I always forget Joel's surname, but he's a fantastic boxer who's up and coming. Tunde trains him. I know his surname begins with K. Joel but he's a fantastic boxer.
Tunde has so many fighters.
Yes,
of varying different levels.
Yeah,
he still does the amateurs.
Anyway. All those guys will be there. Don Charles is coming down. Steve Bunce is coming, Colin Hart's coming, Jordan Thompson, up and coming cruiserweight, who's moving up to heavyweight, I believe. I don't know if I was meant to say that. I think he is. Yeah. Okay. Good. It's okay. Yeah. So there's a whole host of people coming down, and then we've got support from all sorts of people in the film and TV world who are interested in the story as well. Musicians, artists in terms of grime artists, and the story's really captured loads of people's attention, and I'm really glad about that. So if anyone does want to come and see it, make sure you come down.
There's only one more thing to ask. When and where do we see it? I mean, how long's the run? Where should we go? And how do we get tickets?
Yeah, so the play starts from the 6th of November to the 30th of November here in London at Park Theatre, right next to Finsbury Park Tube Station. You literally come out and it's a 30-second walk. You can get tickets by going to Park Theatre's website, or you can come onto our website, which is goingforgoldplay.com. And that will direct you to where to get tickets from. I would get in there quick because last year we sold out and there were loads of people who were left disappointed, or, there was a couple of nights where people just turn up on the night and, there was about 50 to 100 people who couldn't get in. Obviously this runs longer. It's for the whole month of November. There are some nights that are already sold out, and I have a feeling after press night, I think the tickets are going to go quick. So get in there while you've got the chance.
Okay, yeah, sounds fantastic. Going for Gold, the story of Frankie Lucas. Available now. Tickets, you can get them. Go down into your description. We're going to pop a link in there for you, Jazz. Thanks very much for stopping by Boxing News HQ today. We wish you all the best with your run. I'm sure it will go very, very well. And we look forward to seeing it ourselves and catching up soon.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, guys. Really, really appreciate it.